Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Jozarov chess channel, and welcome to the round 2 of the Grand Chess Tour in 2019 in Zagreb, Croatia. So, today we had the clash, the former world champion against the current world champion Magnus Carlsen against Viswanathan Anand. For me, it was a top game, and I really wanted to say something about Viswanathan Anand. I really hate these comments. I have read many comments on many chess websites which say that Viswanathan Anand should retire. Stop doing that, guys. I don't know. I'm really happy that Viswanathan Anand is still playing in top grandmaster level, and today he showed that he can still play with this with Magnus Carlsen, with Fabiano Caruana, with all of these young fellas, with top grandmasters like Anish Giri and many more. So as said, I'm really looking forward to see how Viswanathan Anand will continue in the continuation of this tournament. Although he lost the game yesterday, doesn't matter. Still, I wish him all of the best, and I'm really glad that he is participating here also in Croatia. So as said, my opinion is that he's really not retiring material. So you'll see why now in this game against Magnus Carlsen, against the best of the world. And as I said, so here Viswanathan Anand he's still the tiger. He can still battle. He can still fight. He has still some blood in his veins, and as I said, he deserves all of our respect. So let's see now the game. We have d4 by Magnus Carlsen, knight on f6 by Anand, and here c4 by Carlsen. We have after e6 again the Nimzo Indian defense. Here knight on f3. We have the anti-Nimzo Indian setup. I'm repeating myself, but I always love to mention here knight on f3 with knight on c3. With this knight on f3. We're preventing the spinning ideas by with bishop on b4. So for those who maybe have troubles to play against the Nimzo Indian with white, I think this knight on f3 is a perfect setup. So here d5 played by Anand, also a common move. Now we have transposed into the queen's gambit declined setup. Here knight on c3, and now comes this d takes c4. We have now the Vienna variation of the queen gambit declined. It was often played by young Krzysztof Duda. Magnus Carlsen, I believe this year in Vikings, he really smashed young Krzysztof Duda in this opening line. And here Carlsen also played bishop on e4, and here bishop on b4 was played by Anand. And the same line was played also in a couple of weeks ago between Magnus Carlsen and Viswanathan Anand in the Altibox Norway chess tournament. Here bishop on g5 was played also by Magnus Carlsen, and here c5 also the same move order here by Viswanathan Anand with the move c5. So both of these players are really familiar with this types of lines, with these types of setups. They have a good opening preparation in these types of lines. So here bishop on c4, and now c takes d4, knight takes on d4, and here bishop on c3 also played by Viswanathan Anand against Carlsen. We have now after b takes c3 a weak pawn on c3, but white will continue the game with the bishop pair. Still we have sort of a pin here by the bishop on g5, so still many tactical possibilities with e5. So that's why Anand played here queen on a5, gets out of the spin, but is risking a little bit some bishop takes on f6 ideas, which could really weaken the pawn structure. And here in the last game in the Altibox Norway chess tournament in 2019, as I said a couple of weeks ago, Magnus played knight on b5, then knight on e4 was played, queen on d4, and then you see you cannot really take this knight on g5 because you're risking queen on g7. So this was this line in that game. Anand played a6 in order to kick away this knight. So as I said, here they changed a little bit the sideline of this Vienna variation with bishop on b5 immediately by Carlsen. So here bishop on d7 was played. Now bishop takes on f6, and we have g takes on f6, and now bishop on d7, knight on d7. And okay, we have now really well equalish position, but still Magnus Carlsen has a very powerful open d file. Anand has also weakened pawn structure with his doubling pawns here on f6. We have now the c3 weakness, and here Magnus played immediately castling, leaving this pawn on c3 hanging. Now, okay, it's maybe not the best move to take this pawn here, but Anand took this pawn on c3 because you see, okay, we have now at least grabbed the pawn, but Magnus has to battle for the pawn, and Magnus played the move queen on a4. Maybe the best way would have been here to play rook on b1 in order to attack this pawn on b7, and then prepare some maybe knight on b5 and knight on d6 outpost, which could be really deadly, because it's really hard for black to castle here, because we have also some discovered attacks by the queen on the knight. So okay, I like this idea more maybe, but Magnus decided to queen on a5. But there is really one tricky line here. If knight on b6 is played to get out of this d-file mess, then you have rook on c1. If queen on b4 is played, then you have a very interesting tactical idea with knight on e6. After f takes e6, queen on h5, the king has to go here on e7. Now rook on c7 is a powerful idea. You have to bring the knight on d7, and now this other rook can come into the game. Rook on d1. Okay, black can protect here with rook from a to d8, but still it's unclear here. The evaluation here is better for white. White has really some good attacking chances with some powerful attacks by this heavy artillery here by these rooks and the queen. So I said Magnus Carlsen decides to go queen on a4, not allowing so far to castle. But here you see Viswanathan Anand castled anyway, because if something like queen takes on d7, then we have here rook on d7, and in the next move we can take the knight also. So this would lead into really drawish game. That's why here Carlsen played first knight on e6. At least he wants to grab a pawn he wants to get back his pawn, and then to take the knight. But here Anand played knight on b6, and here we have queen on d4. Now rook from f to c8, and now queen takes on c3, rook takes on c3, and now knight on f4. And okay, it's really now a weird game. We have a 4-on-3 situation here on the king side by Magnus Carlsen, and we have also a 2-1 situation here by Anand. And there is always this rule while playing this knights and pawns endgames, and I'll show you at the end of this video 2 videos that I've made in my basics in chess videos on my YouTube chess channel. I have also created this basics in chess series in which I show you some basic principles about chess. I'll show you 2 links about how you should play this knight and pawn endgames. One of the basic rules is that you should create some distant pass pawns, like maybe here on the a file or here on the h file. So that's the main idea, because the knight is battling very hard against distant pass pawns, especially this one on the edge of the board. So that's why one of the ideas here for Anand would have been to create a distant pass pawn situation on the a file. Here for Magnus Carlsen, of course, it's really much harder, because we have the kings on the king side, and the king is much further to the action here on the king side. So that's why it would be hard here for Magnus Carlsen to create a pass pawn on the h file. So okay, it's an equal game. The evaluation here is equal for both sides. Still, we know that Magnus Carlsen is an endgame expert. It's really hard to play against him in this equalish games. He's really winning these types of positions. And in the continuation here, Anand played rook on c5, not allowing some jumps of the knight on a very active square on d5. Rook from f to d1 was played, and now f5, we want to undouble the pawns. This is the main idea. E takes f5 was played. Okay, rook takes on f5 leads maybe here to g3. Then we can play this other rook on the c file, rook on d3, and Magnus Carlsen would double up the rooks on the d file. Here, after e takes f5, well, Viswanathan Anand played a little bit a way around. He played first rook on c8. This is still a weak pawn. It's hard to protect this pawn. If you hang on to this protection, well, then Viswanathan Anand will have a huge activity on the c file. That's why here f6 was played, at least trying to deflect this one of these rooks a little bit back, at least to the 6th rank. And here Anand played, of course, rook on f5. Now g3, again the same idea, rook takes on f6, and now we have a similar position because Magnus also played here rook on d3. Rook from f to c6 was played, and now rook on a3 with an attack on this pawn. But here Anand tries to simplify the position even further. Rook on c1 with the check, rook takes on c1, king on g2, and now knight on c8. Rook on d3. Magnus Carlsen is now trying to infiltrate on the 7th rank. So if you are faster here, there is also one of these rules in the chess game is in the chess endgame is whoever takes the first pawn, he will probably win the game. At least you cannot lose the game, because we have now 4 pawns on the board. If you start to take pawns first, you have a really advantage, and basically it's hard to lose these types of endgames. So that's why here rook on c7 was played by Viswanathan Anand, getting back. At least he's trying to defend himself. Rook on d8, and now king on g7. Here h4 played by Carlsen, because we want also to have a control of this g5, and we'll try to somehow play actively with the knight. Knight on e7 was played here. Of course, you have to play also actively with your own knight. Knight on h5 was played by Carlsen, and here, well, Anand makes sort of an inaccuracy, because you can simply go here, I think, king on d6. After knight on f4, we can try again the same idea, knight on h5, again king on g6, and it's basically a forced draw. If you try something like g4 in order to support the knight, then you have a very powerful move f5. So as said, maybe this repetition of moves would be an idea for Anand, but he went here after knight on h5, king on h6, and attacked the knight immediately. Knight on f6 played by Carlsen. Now you see the knight gets more centralized. Anand allowed a little bit, allowed some spaces here for Magnus Carlsen. King of g6 again with an attack on the knight, and you see now the problems. The knight can come here on e8. That's why rook on c6. Now we have rook on d7. This rook is now really occupying the 7th rank, which is now the main problem here for Anand. Rook on e6, defending the knight. And if you take immediately here this pawn on b7, well, it leads here after knight on c8. Knight on c7 can be played, but now rook on e7, and you see you cannot take this pawn on a7, and you cannot also leave the defense of this knight on c7. So it will be really risky here for Magnus Carlsen, because maybe the king can somehow try and support the attack. But basically what we can do is play really freely with our knight, maybe, and also with our king. So this would be also a very powerful idea here for Anand to make a clear draw. So after h5, as I said, here rook on e6 was played, and here Carlsen tried h5. At least somehow also deflect the king a little bit from the action. Of course, you cannot take immediately king on h5, because you get some fork ideas here on f6. So this would be also very dangerous if you allowed it. So this rook will is a little bit stuck to the defense. Here we have also this knight on g7 idea. So rook on f6 in some occasions, immediate fork here. So h5 is okay, aggressive, but it weakens a little bit also this pawn. After h5 here, again Anand played a simple king on h6 in order to stay with the king actively, in order to defend with the king. Here knight on d6 was played by Carlsen, and now we have this move f5, which stops this g4 move. The g4 move is very important. If Magnus managed to push the pawn here on g4, then he can play maybe f3 after that, then king on h3, h4, and then maybe to push the pawn here on g5, which could be really deadly to have these two connected pawns on the 5th rank. As said, you shouldn't allow this. So knight on b7 was played, and now rook knight on g8, rook knight on d6, and here knight on f6. Here Anand finds a very nice reposition of the knight. Now the knight can play really freely and actively. Knight takes on f5 was played in here. King on g5 with an attack on the knight, and here Magnus attacked also this rook, and here we have a trade of rooks, and here now Anand took this pawn on h5. Although the evaluation is really better here, of course, for white, but the computer sometimes evaluates this position by the simple pawns. So whenever you have this endgame with one pawn up, the computer evaluates the position like +1. So I also read some. It's really hard to win such endgames here. You have to play really precisely. You have to play, I don't know, like Alpha Zero or Stockfish here. And from a human perspective, I think it's really hard to win this endgame, because in order to make progress with these pawns, you need both of these pieces, also the knight and also the king. And as I said, it's really hard to battle for a knight against this distant pass pawns, or against this pawns on the edge of the board. So that's what it would be also hard to catch them. Here Magnus tried king on f3, king on g6 was played, and now rook on king on f4. We have king on f6. Anand goes into this opposition. It's not allowing the king to go further into black's camp. Knight on g5 was played, and here h6, knight on e4 was played, and now king on e6. You see now Anand created this very powerful defensive setup with the king and the pawn. So these two pieces are not allowing the king to come here on g5 or on f5. So when you play sometimes with your pawns in an endgame, you should also try to have these types of setups in which your opponent cannot maybe infiltrate on your side of the board. So king on g4 was played by Anand, and here we have king on e5. You see how hard it is for Magnus to make some progress, because we have always some tempos on the knight. We can always in the next move attack the knight again, so we can grab many tempos. Here f3 was played. Magnus is trying to have this centralized knight, to stay with the centralized knight. Here king on d4 was played, and now king on f5. This looks now dangerous here for Anand, because the king is really going forward and will try to attack. But still, also Anand can go and grab one of these two connected pass pawns on the f and g file. King on e3, of course, was played, and now we have f4 by Carlsen. h5, very important move. As said, if Magnus Carlsen makes this g4 move, if he connects these two pawns, this could be really deadly for Viswanathan Anand. So that's why h5 prevents these ideas. Knight on g5 played by Carlsen, and now knight on c5. Here king on g6 was played, and now king on f2. Of course, we have f5. Magnus is trying to make this pass pawn work. King takes on g3 was played, and now knight on e6. But of course, Anand is not interested to trade off this knights, because Magnus Carlsen will simply be faster on the promotion here. After potential f takes e6, then he has only 2 more moves in order to promote the queen. Knight on d7 was played. King takes on h5, and now king on f3, king on g5, king on e4. You see Anand is playing really actively with the king, and the problem is, from Magnus' perspective, that you cannot play immediately the pawn f6. We can simply take and go after this pawn, and this will be a theoretical draw. So that's why here, after king on e4, here knight on c7 was played, and here Anand plays a very good move, a5, goes into this diagonal setup against this knight, because if you see Magnus Carlsen would need maybe, I'm just saying, it's not of course possible immediately. But if you go in into this diagonal setup with the knight, you see you will have 1 2 and then 3 more moves in order to attack this pawn, and still then the pawn can make some progress. So I see it's basically um, impossible here for the knight to catch this pawn, and that's why here knight on b5 played by Carlsen. Here Anand goes simple king on d3. He's simply waiting Magnus to push this pawn on f6 and then go for this a2 pawn. But Magnus, of course, one of the best endgame players, finds the very powerful idea. King on g6, a4 by Anand. Here we have king on f7. Now knight on e5. King on f6. Now we have knight on f3. King on e7, and here a very strong move, king on c2. So maybe here Magnus Carlsen should have gone immediately with the move f6, try to make promotion, but again it's really hard. King on b2 can be the continuation, and then in some occasions we can try something like here knight on e5, and if white tries to go to promotion, we can try knight on g6, because knight on g6 is covering the f8 square and also will have an attack on the king. So there are some fork threats here by Viswanathan Anand. So that's why knight on d4 first, king on b2 was played, and now knight on e6. Of course, knight on h7 was played by Viswanathan Anand. He's not interested to go into this into the trading of this knights. Again, I'm pointing out that Magnus Carlsen is faster on the attack. Here we have f7 played by Carlsen, and here king takes on a2. We have knight on g5, and here a3 played by Viswanathan Anand. This is a great move. This is, of course, Magnus Carlsen has to take. Knight takes on h7, but now king on b1. We have the promotion of the queen to f8. Great endgame play here by Viswanathan Anand, and now a2. And the problem is that well, it's always hard to win this game, because the knight is too far away from the action. If you try something like, I don't know, here queen on b8, you can always go king on a1, and you see you cannot stay on the same file because you're risking a stalemate position. So that's why here Magnus tried queen on f5, of course king on b2, here queen on e5, king on b1, queen on e4. Again, here Anand is simply repeating moves, and you see it's basically impossible to play actively with this knight. Here Viswanathan Anand played for a simple promotion. Knight on d5 was played, but now here we have queen on g7, and it's a theoretical draw. Let's see what happened. King on d6, queen on f8, king on e5, and here Magnus Carlsen played sort of a tricky move. He left here Viswanathan Anand to play this move, queen on e8. Now we have king on d4, and here Anand took the queen, but now we have the fork on c3, and after king on a1, here Carlsen took the queen, and of course it's the endgame. So great game, I think. Great endgame technique by Viswanathan Anand. Viswanathan Anand was really under pressure here, but managed to battle against the world champion. Still, Viswanathan Anand is playing great chess, I think, and I'm really looking forward to see how he's going to make progress in this tournament, because we see anyone can win anyone again. Basically, Magnus Carlsen is unbeatable so far, but in this tournament we had many surprises. Like in the first round, Nepomniachtchi won with black pieces against Anand. So as I said, anyone can win against anyone in this tournament, which is, I think, really one of the best in chess history. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this game. Meanwhile, you can watch my two videos from this chess endgame series that I've created with this distant past pawn, which is knights and pawns, which are a little bit similar to this game that I've shown you today. And you can also watch my previous video from this Grand Chess Tour in 2019 in Croatia, and you can also subscribe to my channel. Thanks you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.